Now it's time to get to work on our first real Mathematica notebook assignment. When you first open up Lab1 Part1, you should see something that looks like this. And before we get started in working through our way through the notebook, I want to kind of talk a little bit about the parts of the notebook. Now, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to make the magnification of this print that you're looking at a little bit bigger so that it's easier to see on the video. On a Macintosh, which is what I'm working on, the control of the font size is up here in the upper right-hand corner of the Mathematica window. On a PC, it's usually down here in the lower right-hand corner. So I'm going to actually blow this up to 200 because in making a video, it turns out that really big print is useful. Now I want to kind of talk about the pieces of a notebook. The first thing is I am working on a Macintosh, and the main Mathematica menu, as on all Macintoshes, is up across the very top of the computer screen. If you are on a PC, the main Mathematica menu will be on the title bar for the window. At some point, you should take the opportunity to click on all of these menus and see what's underneath each one of them. I'm going through it quickly without reading them because what you want to do is you want to kind of get used to finding stuff through the menus. So when I refer to look at doing something by the file menu or the edit menu, I'm talking about going up to that part of the notebook and sliding down to something. Now there are some other things that I want to talk about before we actually open up anything in this notebook. The first thing is that a Mathematica notebook is organized into what are called cells, and that's what this notebook is all about. And you should notice that over on the right-hand side of your notebook, there are these square bracket things. Each one of those is called a cell bracket, and it demarks the content in a particular part of the notebook. So if I highlight this cell bracket right there, I'm actually highlighting the content in this title for the notebook. If I come down here and highlight this one, I'm basically looking at the cell content that says put your name here. Some other things that I want to notice is that typically when you open up a notebook, I may have it collapsed down into what is considered an outline form. Anytime you see one of these a box with these double arrows in it, that says there's a closed group, and you can open the group up by clicking on that, and you close the group by clicking on it. And you'll get used to doing that. When you first open up a notebook that you're going to be turning in, like this one, the very first thing that you need to do is highlight the text that says put your name here and replace it with your name. Now, the next thing that you need to know is you need to know about saving the notebook. So let's open up this particular subgroup. And you should be doing these things as you're watching the video. You can always stop the video and do what I've said to do and then start the video back up. Now, I've saved my name to put your name as, and I say that you should always save your notebook. If this is the first time that you've saved the notebook since downloading it and you're not quite sure where it went to, I would strongly recommend doing a save as. And you can do that by going up to the file menu and sliding down to save as. Now, in a Macintosh, what should come up is some kind of a browser. It may not look exactly like this, but if you play around, you should be able to do this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a special file folder under my 163 folder, which has got all kinds of stuff. And I'm going to create a folder that says this semester. And the beauty of the Blackboard system is you don't really need to rechange the names of these. If you want to, you can, but I'm just going to save it that way. Now, every time I do a save, and the keyboard shortcut on a Macintosh for save is a Command S. On a PC, I believe it's a Control S. But every time I do a Command S, it will save the file to that same name that I just looked at saving it to. There are some tips about how to save your work to places that you can find. In particular, if you're working in the lab, you should save your work somewhere. The desktop is a good place, but it's going to be wiped as soon as you log off. And so I would strongly suggest that you have a flash drive. But if you don't have a flash drive with you, email the file to yourself after you get out of Mathematica and before you leave the lab. If you're on your own laptop, you really need to figure out where you want to save things. I would suggest making a folder for all of your MAT163, to keep all of your MAT163 files in one place. Now what I want you to do is I want you to open up the next section of the notebook that should be open on your desktop as you're watching this video. And what I want you to notice is that the instructions say the following cell instructs Mathematica to add 1 and 3 together. Now, we all know that 1 plus 3 is equal to 4, and we don't see an answer for 4. So what I want to notice is that as I move my cursor around, now your cursor won't have the blue circle on it, but what it will have is this funny little eye shape. If you move it up and down slowly, you should see that the eye goes from a vertical eye to a horizontal eye. I want you to get the vertical eye right next to that 3 and click. And when you do, you should notice that right by that 3, there is a vertical flashing cursor. Now that is the typing cursor, and the thing that is the capital I is the mouse cursor. If I start typing, it goes into that cell. Now to activate the cell, I have to do a combination of a shift and a return at the same time. If your keyboard has a separate enter button, you can do the enter button all by itself. So stop the video and do that shift return and see if you can get Mathematica to say 4. Hopefully you've done that. Our next task is to create a brand new input cell. Now stop the video and read these instructions. Hopefully you've done that. What we're now going to do is actually go through them while you're watching my mouse, and you should do this on your own notebook. First of all, I move the cursor to where I get a horizontal eye right after the question that I am trying to answer. And then I click, and you'll notice that we now have a horizontal line with a flashing horizontal piece of the line right there. This says I have a new cursor, or I have a new text, I have a new input cell. And as soon as I start talking, the input cell will appear. So here's how I do 50 factorial. I just type 50 factorial, and then I do the shift return. And you should be able to do this in your notebook and get the exact same answer. That's how you create a new Mathematica input cell. Well, what about text cells? Because every time you are going to be solving a problem, I'm going to want you to tell me what the output means when there's some kind of interpretation. So for text cells, the text cells are most of what you're reading when you're looking at my notebooks, because I have this set up as kind of an interactive textbook. You read stuff, I tell you what to do, I ask a question, and then you have to do it. So for a text cell, to create a text cell, the process is just a little bit more complicated. You create the cell in the same way, but before you start typing, you have to either hit Command 7 on a Macintosh or Alt 7 on a PC. So I want you to create a text cell right below question 2's cell. Stop the video and try and do that. Hopefully you did that. So I move my cursor to where I get a horizontal eye. I click and I have that horizontal thing. Before I start typing, I hit a Command 7, and now when I type, this is a sentence. You will notice that the font is the same variable width font as text cells have. Input cells have a fixed width font. Now, if you happen to forget to type the Command 7 or the Alt 7, and you start typing, you're going to getting a fixed width font. The text might be in blue, and you're going to want to change that back to a text cell. The thing to do here is to select the cell bracket and then do the Command 7 or the Alt 7. Or you can also go to the Format menu and deal with sliding to select text. But Command 7 or Alt 7 is usually going to work better. Stop the video and try and change that input cell to a text cell. Hopefully you've done that. And now it's a good idea to save your work. The last thing that we want to do in this particular notebook is to look at copying, pasting, and editing cells. So again, open the cell group up. Stop the video, read these instructions, and after you've read these instructions, start the video back up and try and do it in your notebook at the same time that you're watching this video. So what I want to do is to copy and paste a cell. First of all, on question 4, I need to activate this cell. So I activate the cell and I get this nice graph of the sine and cosine. You will notice that the red graph is the sine graph, the blue graph is the cosine graph. If I add colors under this plot style command, it's going to be in exactly the same order as the functions that we are looking at. So now what I want to do is I want to copy and paste and edit the input cell so that I can make a cell that has these 3 functions in it, and then I want to create a text cell that tells me which graph is which. So here's how we're going to go doing it. The first thing is I select the cell bracket with the content that I want, and I do on a Macintosh it's a command. It is a Control C, or you can go to the edit menu and do a copy. Then I move the cursor down to where I get a horizontal eye, and I click to get that horizontal bar. And now you can do either a Command V if you're on a PC, a Control V if you're on a PC, or you can use the menu to paste the particular contents. Now I have to actually edit the contents. Now it's important to realize, and I would suggest that you edit this by watching me, stopping the video, and then doing it in your own text cell. All Mathematica constants and functions are capitalized, so that e to the x squared has to be entered as a capital E raised to the x squared. 14x squared plus 5 is easy enough. And then 5 times secant of x, but I want to square that secant, so I have to put parentheses around the secant and then square it. You will notice that the secant has to be squared and the parentheses have to go around the secant, and then I type in this square bracket. Now I only have 2 colors here, so I have to add some other color. I will do it in brown. Now the final thing is I just want Mathematica to pick its own plot range. And let's see, let's actually make this go from -3 to +3. And so here's my plot. And what I can see is that the red graph is the exponential graph, The brown graph is that 5 times the secant, and the blue graph is my parabola. Well, I have to get that into a text cell. And I'm going to kind of come back and forth between going up to this cell and down here. So I want to create a text cell. You'll notice that I already have a horizontal bar because I always get that right after an input. So I'm going to do the Command 7 because I'm on a Macintosh. If you're on a PC, it's Alt 7. And now I'm going to say the red curve is, and the red curve was the first curve, and I can actually copy and paste this little chunk of text into my new text cell. The blue curve is my second function, which was the parabola. And the brown curve is the secant graph. And so now what I need to do is, I'm going to clean that up. I want to save my work, and then I need to turn the notebook in. Now, I'm not actually going to step you through the process of turning the notebook in, but basically you turn the notebook in the same way you turn in any other kind of document in a Blackboard Dropbox. So you will want to quit Mathematica completely and then attach this particular notebook to the Dropbox for Lab 1 Part 1. So see if you can do that.